what does Korea do? I don't know. It kind of organically evolved into a major powerhouse.
Welcome to the series in which I, Jason Verney, filmmaker, video artist and writer, introduce to you interesting individuals from the world of filmmaking. In this 5th episode, we are back in the metropolis of Bangkok and talking to Nigel Savio D'Sa, a filmmaker, producer and screenwriter, and who is also an experienced journalist, professor and actor.
With documentaries, I mean, it always helps to have a producer, but when it comes to indie factual filmmaking, you don't necessarily need one.
Amongst other subjects touched on, we chat about his film-related work in South Korea, Thailand, elsewhere, and about a TV drama series currently being worked on, which, like many creations in the art world, can go through various changes from conception to completion. Nigel also offers some advice for filmmakers keen to progress with their projects. So, here we are. This time we are in Bangkok and we are with filmmaker Nigel, who's going to tell us some information about his career, his varied life in Asia and elsewhere in the world, in film production and other related things. So what I'll probably do first, Nigel, is if you just introduce how you'd like to be known or if you just want to introduce yourself and your full name, etc.
Sure, okay. Should I hold the mic?
Yeah, that's good.
Hello. So, well, my full name is Nigel Savio D'Sa. I hail from Canada, but I was born in London, England. And as Jason mentioned, I'm a filmmaker. So I graduated in film production at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. But I've also majored in literature, and I have a kind of academic career alongside my filmmaking career. So since my late 20s, I moved to Asia, mostly South Korea, and I've been teaching film and literature in South Korea since the early 2000s. I've also been working in film in South Korea since the early 2000s. I had a production company there, produced a major Korean film and a few short films as well. Let's see, what else can I say? Worked for the government in Korea at the Korean Film Council, promoting Korean films overseas. And more recently, I've moved to Bangkok, Thailand. So I'm here trying to get back into filmmaking, well, actually television production, and that's my new adventure.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Nigel. Yeah, you mentioned that you didn't mention this, sorry. We met in Korea in Busan International Film Festival at least once or twice. And you mentioned that you were working in Korea at the time, but was it, even when I met you, were you doing what you just mentioned, or were you kind of on a hiatus, or were you doing the film festival rounds? Because at that time
I don't
you
know.
had that.
Give me a time frame.
Yeah, I know. Was it 2014, 15, or is it 13 even? Maybe it was. I'm not sure.
I was kind of maybe retiring from film or taking a long hiatus. I kind of made a couple of films and was looking for a new project, but by that time the film industry in South Korea had consolidated quite a bit. It wasn't the same landscape when I first arrived, when things were a bit more indie and there was a lot of venture capital and artistic directors and writers could possibly get their films made. So by the 2010s it was much harder, and at that time I had kind of moved to the margins of the film industry, focused more on teaching at universities, but still visited all the festivals, and I think I was still working at Busan as their copy editor at the time. So that's when I met you.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was then. I do recall, you mentioned as well that you mentioned a major Korean feature film. Are you okay to mention that title? Was it a success in general? Was it success in Korea or more outside Korea? Was it a bit of both?
It was a local production, not really intended for the overseas market. It's called Shotgun Love in English. The Korean title is Sarangi Musawo, and it's a romantic comedy. So it came out in 2012. We worked with Latte Entertainment, and we got a pretty wide release, maybe 300 screens nationwide. So did it do well? I think no. I mean, it opened at number one, but it didn't last long in theaters. So, and to be frank, it was bad timing. It was also like the weekend of the Japanese tsunami and earthquakes, so a lot of Koreans were not going to theaters. They were staying home watching the news with their families, and that was my first experience with a feature film. After that, I made a documentary feature, pretty indie, that premiered in Jeonju Film Festival, and then a couple of shorts, and then kind of stopped making films in South Korea.
Yeah. Okay, well, yeah. I mean, it's quite funny that we've got this connection with Korea and films, of course, and also we actually, although it wasn't today, it was a few months ago. We actually bumped into each other in Bangkok, and unexpectedly. So it was kind of a strange twist of fate that we met up like this. The reason I'm saying that is because I wanted to ask about your going back to. You studied film production, and the reason I'm saying it's different countries, but you did it at UBC in Vancouver.
Yeah, that's right.
And UBC. Now, I wondered how has that helped you? How has it helped you in things like directing? So not just film production. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know you learn all different aspects, but how has that? I mean, what did you take away from it mostly?
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I retained some of the fundamentals of filmmaking from my sojourn in Vancouver. I mean, some education's always better than none. I mean, the program at UBC was very practical. It was technically oriented. We were making films. It was a bit dated. It was like the late 90s, and we were still editing on flatbeds with real celluloid. So things have changed since. But yeah, I mean, the basics of story design and editing and shooting are universal. So if you go to school, it's definitely going to help you if your career is in filmmaking.
Yep, thanks, Nigel. I'm just going to... Yeah, well, I actually did wonder... obviously, like I said before, we've met in Korea, and you've mentioned your connection with Korea, but how did that come about, your getting into that sort of industry in general? I mean, apart from the fact you've been to film production in Vancouver, you've been educated in film production. How did you actually get into the business that you were in?
That's a good question, and kind of like bumping into you, it was serendipity, synchronicity, a series of accidents that kind of got me more and more into the Korean film industry. But I guess the main thing was I was a journalist, and I'd started writing for local magazines while I was living in Seoul, and eventually started doing a lot of Korean film coverage. And because I was attending festivals, I ran into other journalists and got an offer to write with The Hollywood Reporter as a stringer, occasionally for Busan and a few other festivals. And so as my journalistic career took off, I came to the attention of KOFIC, the Korean Film Council. They needed a writer, and through a friend who was already working there, I got on board with them and started writing for their website. And the great thing about KOFIC is you gradually meet everyone in the film industry. It's not it's not. It's everyone knows everyone in the film industry in South Korea. So it's good. It was good to meet people on a first name basis, and then find out who you click with. And eventually, I found 2 interesting Korean directors who I really got along with, and we decided to start a company together called We Pictures, and that's what led to Shotgun Love and a few other things.
Yeah, it's Korean Film Council, KOBIZ, KOFIC. Sorry, I remember they're quite a big thing in Korea, of course, because they are the Film Council. But I remember they actually had, just going a bit off topic here, but they used to have a monthly newsletter, and that was that. Now they had like an iPad version, KOBIZ. Were you involved? Were your articles in that, or was that before or after, or was that a different publication to what you were physically involved with?
No, there was. I was there during that time period. So occasionally my articles would be part of the newsletter. I think Darcy Paquette ran the newsletter mostly, and then I contributed some of my articles, or whichever ones he liked. So yeah.
Yeah, we've got some mutual friends again connected to KOFIC. We got Piers Conran. You probably know Piers. You must probably know him.
He came in to KOFIC. He came in towards the end of my run at KOFIC. I was there for about 5 years, and he was there in my last year.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know out there, Darcy Paquette, he's a man of many talents, but he's a subtitler, translator, occasionally appearing in Korean films. He's Parasite is one of his latest films that he's been known for doing the subtitles, and he's a really nice, really good guy. So that's how that happened. So the Hollywood Reporter, how did that differ to what you've just spoken about? Writing for the Hollywood Reporter, which is, a pretty esteemed publication. So when you moved to things with KOBIZ, or rather KOFIC, did you find much of a difference in the way? There must be an internal difference in, you've got like a Korean way of working for a start, and the Hollywood Reporter's way of doing things. Did you find much difference? Was it easier at one and not the other, or did you find it quite an easy transition?
Oh, it's. I think I was doing both in tandem, so there's some differences, I guess. At KOFIC, I pretty much decided what I wanted to write about. I would pick major topics of the week and write 3 or 4 articles a week. With THR, usually I was assigned what to write about, and there's a format, and you should always try to get live quotes for your article and things like that. So a little bit different.
And I'm just thinking of the British film industry, because it's something that we don't really have the same as Korea. Something that I've always been amazed at, like Korean film, is the way that these big companies like Lotte or CJ, how they get involved. But I feel like the British Film Council could learn a lot from the way that they do things. These big conglomerates or chaebols, it's kind of. I just feel like it has to be commercial film to go through Lotte or CJ, but you do find independent ones that also get produced by other companies like New, and there's some other smaller Korean companies.
Sure, yeah.
But I just wondered, well, essentially, what could the British film industry learn from the Korean industry, do you think, if anything? I know it's a different structure, but is there anything that you feel like they could do differently from what you know about the British film?
Yeah, I don't know too much about the UK film industry, other than usually there's 3 or 4 good films coming out each year. What does Korea do? I don't know. It kind of organically evolved into a major powerhouse. When I first arrived in Korea in the early 2000s, it wasn't dominated by major studios as much. There was, like I said, a lot of indie production companies and venture capital coming in. But by the late 2000s, CJ, Lotte, and Showbox pretty much dominated vertically the whole industry. From financing films to exhibition. So, and maybe that's a good thing. It certainly streamlines production, and you tend to make a bigger, more commercial films that have a greater chance of traveling overseas. So there's that. But I mean, they did kind of sacrifice the Indian artistic scene, or I think it shrunk somewhat, since.
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually forgot Showbox when you said that, because that is a big one. It is interesting as well. I know a bit about CJ. They've got their own, their own brand, of course. Lotte have got their own cinemas, or in Shinsegae and places, and of course they're going to be more likely to show their own films and what have you. And that made me think of Thailand as well, because it's got its own shopping malls who have branded, they've kind of got their own, is it Megabox? Was that Korea? I'm getting confused now.
Megabox is Korea.
Korea, that's Korea. What's the one here? But there's various chains here. But I was just thinking it's very similar with the shopping mall situation in Korea and Thailand. And one thing I wanted to lead on from that was, recently you gave me one of your business cards. I probably had one from 8 years ago, but you gave me another one. And there's a film called Possessed, and it's a project that you are working on, structuring, you've written, or it's sorry, it's not a film, is it? It's a series.
Yeah, it's a TV drama series, kind of evolved out of a meeting with a Thai producer here whom I'd met several times earlier, and he asked me if I had any stories, and I had written a story in South Korea for Korea, but never used it, and then I adapted it for this market. It was a thriller before, but now it's more of a film noir with a supernatural element, because the ghost genre is very popular among Thais still. So the Possessed is exactly that. It's a kind of a murder mystery with a supernatural side to it, and I'm developing it for television. We're going to target the streaming majors, so we're still in the process of pitching, and nothing yet's been decided, so we'll see what happens.
Okay, well that's sorry, we're also recording this to give it a bit of atmosphere. We're recording this in Bangkok, so you might be able to hear a bit of traffic. Now, I wondered also about funding. Now, you've just mentioned pitching, but what's been your experience on either getting a film funded yourself, or perhaps you've been approached for other projects for you to fund other people's films? I mean, have you got maybe things you've learned about funding from either side of the fence kind of thing?
Yeah, what can I say? It's always a tricky business, financing films, and I mean, in Korea I was a producer, which is it was my job to find financing for film projects, and Shotgun Love was made generally through me and my partner's efforts in Busan to pitch 3 scripts to investors who would come to the market there, and at the time it was called PPP, Busan Promotion Plan. I think it's called AFM now, but so back then we would have scripts, and we would meet investors and basically pitch the old-fashioned way, and it turned out that one of the scripts was liked, and so it got financed, and then we worked on rewrites and all kinds of stuff with Lotte. Here in Thailand, I'm not too sure how it works with domestic financing, but our strategy is to pitch to the streaming majors, so it would be Netflix, Disney, HBO, maybe Amazon as well. And if they like what we have to offer, then we'd go through a development process where they might finance the development for 6 months, and if they like the results, we'd go to the next stage.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to hear more about Possessed and what where it gets to. Perhaps I wonder if it's going to change. You said it's already changed from one kind of genre slightly to another. Mm. Do you think that's likely to change again? Perhaps if someone is offering to do it, to make it, and then they say, well, we want it to be a comedy now. I mean, it still hasn't been finalised, has it? Or could the genre change again, or it's possible or not?
Well, I mean, I hope not, and I'm very happy now with the resulting genre that we have, because it works. It's produced a better story than I had before, and I like. It's actually a combination of the film noir and the ghost genre, so they work well together in the story I have. I don't think I could flip it into a comedy, if that's what you're asking.
Well, you never know, I suppose. But okay, just a couple of last questions. One, there's people that might be listening to this that are trying to get a film, their own project or their own small team's project off the ground, and it might sound a bit generic, but is there any advice or some advice you could give somebody who is trying to get something made? Maybe they've written a script, maybe they're trying to get to the next stage. That was one of the things I wanted to just ask you as final questions.
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, ultimately you've got to find a producer willing to pitch your project. I mean, as writers, it's not as if we can just waltz into Netflix and say, here's my script, what do you think? There's some protocol, and so they only work with producers that they know. So if you do have a script, my advice would first be read Story by Robert Mackey and understand 3-act structure, because most of the streaming majors, they're pretty much formatted, and they're looking for story design that's based on 3-act structure. And especially Netflix, they're looking for character-driven stories. So make sure that your characters drive the stories. What else? And then, well, I mean, if you're a local filmmaker, look around you at production companies that have made successful films, and maybe you could approach them. And if you know someone who knows someone, that would be a way in. But generally, you have to have a producer on board first to get your story looked at by any of the streaming majors or even major film investors.
And just in case there's anyone listening who is more on the docu side of things or more factual, do you have much experience in that? That's something I didn't ask you earlier.
Documentary, yeah, that's a bit different, and quite often with documentaries, you can have some footage already shot in the bag, and in that case, I'd recommend looking at documentary support programs. Well, in Asia there are many. You could look at Busan has a documentary support program, so you can submit your rough cut or your footage, and maybe they will support the completion of your documentary. If you don't have any footage, you can still submit what you have in terms of a script to them, and they might support the development of the script. So I would go that route with documentaries. I mean, it always helps to have a producer, but when it comes to indie factual filmmaking, you don't necessarily need one. So.
Okay, well, we've covered there if you've got a feature idea, and if you've got a documentary idea. But one thing I want to just touch on briefly is you mentioned earlier shorts, which is how a lot of people start. Mm-hmm. And how did you, or what could be your advice? How did you find the festival experience for shorts? Because often it is because of festivals, isn't it? You have to. It's a festival circuit kind of job. Unless you're lucky enough to get it onto Netflix, because they do take shorts. But back then, when you were making them, do you have any experience or stories to?
I guess most filmmakers start out with shorts, and when I was in film school in Vancouver, one of our assignments for the year was to produce a short film. We did, and it got selected in the Toronto Film Fest. So Yeah, I mean, that's really the goal, is to get your short film into as many festivals as you can, or at least into as many good ones as you can, so that you have feathers in your cap, and that way when you do approach a producer with your feature script, they will take you more seriously, and so it's a good way to get started and also to hone your skills as a filmmaker.
Great. Thanks, Nigel. Lastly, if somebody wants to find out some more about what you've been dealing with in the past, is it best to go to IMDb, or is it best to go to... do you have a website you want to give out, or some other details?
No, I don't have a current website. There might be something up and running in a few months. I am on IMDb, but it hasn't been updated in a while, and nothing that I'm currently working on is there. But I mean, I'm always open to field questions from emerging filmmakers who might want some feedback. So you can email me. Should I say my email? Yeah.
We can put it in the description, yeah.
Okay.
I know it's like when you've got something on IMDb, you've often got projects in the making, but they can't go on IMDb yet. You know, you can have like 5 different projects on a go, but unfortunately they're, you know, your last project or somebody's last project could be 3 years ago, 5 years ago, but they're still, you know, always behind the scenes trying to get the next one made or finished. Yeah. Okay, well, I think it's been a pleasure talking to you, Nigel, as always.
Likewise, Jason.
So we'll catch up again in Bangkok or Korea, because you've recently come back from Korea again, and Vietnam and other places.
That's right.
And thanks very much again.
My pleasure. Yeah, it's always fun talking with you, and good luck also with your own film endeavors.
Thank you. See ya. You've been listening to the MBF Micro-Budget Filmmakers podcast. If you'd like to hear more of these episodes and check out any you may have missed, please subscribe via Spreaker or wherever you get your podcast fix. And if you want to continue to have access to filmmaker tips, events and exclusive interviews, do sign up for the next Plasm Productions newsletter. You'll be able to read exclusive interviews, attend workshops, and ultimately mingle with like-minded creative folk, as well as speak to more great people in the world of film.